Well, good morning, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the carving shop, and this will be session 2 of carving a Hen Pintail Decoy. In the first session, we got things roughed out. We got the head shaped up. And in this session, I want to go into detail the bill, install the eyes. That's about all the carving we need to do on the head. If you're getting value out of my channel, please hit the subscribe button. Many of you have done that, and I really appreciate it. If you haven't, it doesn't cost anything, but it is a show of support for the channel that I'm putting together. So let's get the camera in and take a look at next steps on the head. Okay, I did some sanding on the head just with 150 grit sandpaper and got it all smoothed out. Now I'm doing a little bit of layout work. So I've got the nail penciled on across the center line, penciled on these two structures on the end of the bill. And I want to take a little wood out in this area on both sides and leave this area raised. We'll come back later and put this crease in here, but it's almost a double structure there. So we want to remove a little material to cast a shadow. And then we'll get the nostrils penciled in after we get this carving done. All right, I want to start on the nail here, and I'm going to use a very small ruby cylinder and use the edge of that to cut the groove around the perimeter of the nail. We don't have to go very deep here. It's pretty subtle. And then I'm going to use the side of that bit to round the edges there. Both the nail and the surrounding area. So we've got that pretty well shaped up. Now I'm going to use the edge of this bit to cut this groove in the front edge of the bill. And that goes about back to here and then kind of fades out. And now I use the edge of that bit to round in both directions. And on the upper side, I'm removing a little material from the bill so that that ridge protrudes a little bit from the bill. So we're repeating that process, just cutting in the groove, using the side of the bit to remove material on the upper part of the bill, and then rounding the edge of this ridge. And I'll go back and forth on this and clean it up and keep working it until I'm satisfied with the way it looks. Like this, I'm going back and cleaning up everything. So I'm making sure there's symmetry from side to side. It's easy to get the size of those ridges different from side to side. So you want to spend some time making sure they're symmetrical. Now I'm going to use this little pin vise. I use this, I've got a ruby flame shaped bit in the end of this pin vise. And this is really a good tool for this type of cleanup work. I can use the tip of that flame to really do a little bit of almost embossing while I'm cleaning up with the ruby as well. And then I'm going to use 150 grit sandpaper and just begin to smooth everything. And I'll go back and forth between the sandpaper and my carving bit until I'm happy with the way it looks. And often I'll fold up a piece of sandpaper like this and use a corner for this type of work. It's a pretty effective and easy tool to use. Just the corner of a square of sandpaper like this. And that'll really clean up that crease. And then I'm rounding everything. I'll work on that for a while. As you've seen me do before, I like to pencil things in after I've carved and just take a look at them. It makes it more obvious if something is off. Now I'm going to shift to this kind of cone-shaped triangular bit, and I'm going to take out material and create this ridge on the lower edge of the upper mandible. So I'm taking material off above and then going back and rounding that so we have a nice soft ridge there. It's kind of hard to see in this picture, but I think you can begin to see the ridge form there. I'll give you a little better view of that after I do this side. So I'm using the tip of the bit to cut in there and then the side of the bit to remove material above the ridge on the lower edge of the mandible. And then going back in the other direction so that I have a nice soft transition there. Now I'm going to use some sandpaper folded up into kind of a round shape and use that to go in and sand everything smooth. I don't want a corner here because that would put marks in this area. There you can get a little bit of a look of, I've started to create a ridge there. I'm just smoothing all the tooling marks out. All right, now I'm going to pencil in this lower crease. And this kind of splits that ridge that we've created in two parts. I'm going to use my knife and very carefully score this. I don't have to go very deep, but this is going to give my little ruby bit a guideline to follow. So just a shallow score here out to the tip of the bill. By the way, this is a Tan Brunei knife that was gifted to me. Tan is an amazing, legendary carver, and I'm blessed to be able to use that tool that Tan used to use to carve with. One of many knives he used. We miss you, Tan. This is back to that little ruby cylinder, and I'm using it to follow that score, the knife line that I just put in place. I'm using the edge of this very small ruby to cut a little bit of a groove in there. Same on this side. Just go at this slowly because you can't afford a slip here. There's not much material to work with. Now I'm using the side of that to clean up the edge and round things. I'm going to use my pin vise, use the tip of that ruby bit to really clean up that crease. And then I'll use the edge, a corner of a piece of sandpaper, and really round in both directions, up and down, so that we have a nice soft look to that upper mandible ridge. So that's probably enough to show you. I'll spend some time sanding everything and getting it nice and smooth before I move on. And now we can do some nostril details. All right, I want to work on laying out the nostril enclosures. You can see they're relatively small, kind of seed shaped, and they angle in just a bit from the top down as they approach the front of the bill. So we'll get a dimension. This bill is, I mentioned, a little shorter, but I think I'm safe using the nostril locations. I'll check that with my pattern too, with a little longer bill. I'm going to go with this off the study bill because the pattern nostrils are just kind of sketched in there. Then I'm going to get a length on that enclosure, front to back. Use my dividers, give myself just a little bit of a mark, a little more narrow, closer to the center line in front. I'll use my pencil to sketch in the enclosures. If you're doing a gunning decoy, you probably don't want to go to this level of detail. This is more of a decorative bird not for hunting use. So I'm going ahead and adding some additional carving details. Had somebody ask me the other day, have I ever done a fully decorative bird? I did one, and that was a long time ago. I have a lot of patience. I just don't have enough patience to do all of the meticulous detail that it takes for a fully decorative bird. This is kind of a sweet spot for me, so I stick to these in-between birds, not a gunning bird. And there's a ratty pencil. Jack Cox is going to love that if he sees that. He kids me about the quality of my pencils all the time. That's a fun part of the carving community, is gathering together, having some fun at shows, giving each other some crap, and just establishing friendships. So I've got those marked out. Now I'm going to carve those in. We'll go back to the bench. Okay, I'm going to go back to my very small ruby cylinder. Use the edge of that to go around the perimeter of this nostril enclosure carefully. And I've got those angled towards the center line as they go further out towards the tip of the bill. And just slightly. So I'm cutting a groove around here initially, and then I'm going to use the side of the bit to start removing material and leave the nostril enclosure raised and take wood out of the surrounding area. So that's what I'm going to do right here. And then I'll also use the side of that bit to round the nostril enclosure. And I won't show you all of the time I'm going to spend doing this. It takes time to develop these nostril enclosures and make sure they're nice and clean. But I'll show you enough that you get the gist of the process here. I'm always afraid I'm showing too much, and then people might get bored and tune out, and I don't want people to tune out. All right, those are shaping up pretty good. Now I'll switch to the flame-shaped ruby bit, and with that sharp tip, it's great for kind of finishing up the development of these. So I'm using the tip of the bit to dig in there a little bit and make that a little deeper on the lower side. And then the round sides of this bit are great for this type of work where I'm using it to blend back into the mandible and smooth things out. And I can also use it to round the enclosure itself. Once again, using the tip to dig in, make that a little deeper, a little more distinct, add some shape to the enclosure, and then ferre that out to the surrounding area. And I'll have to do some sanding. Now I'm going to pencil around these enclosures and see if I'm anywhere close to being symmetrical between the two. Believe me, it's very easy to get off base. And it's very obvious if they're not level. I'm using my pin vise with the ruby flame bit in there for, this is a great tool for this type of work too, just to rough shape things a little bit and remove any marks and do some blending. And the tip of that, like I said before, I can use almost like an embossing tool to dig in a little bit and clean up around these nostril enclosures. I think you can get a pin vise like that on Amazon. I often get questions about that tool because I use it a lot, and I think it's a very valuable tool. I've got a ball, ruby ball in one end and a flame-shaped ruby bit in the other, and I use it all the time. And it's not an expensive tool. Now I'm using the corner of the sandpaper, and I'll go ahead and sand the rest of this bill and get it smooth. Now I've positioned my nostril openings, and I'm going in with a very tiny ruby ball bit and opening those nostrils up. And I used my dividers to make sure I'm getting them symmetrical again from side to side. This is really meticulous work, so just go slowly, and then I'm going to use my pencil to pencil those in, give me a more visual look at what they look like looking down and from the front, and make sure they're right. I can see I need to make a little change to this one. Just by adding the pencil, it just makes it more obvious. Do some light sanding to finish things up on the bill. So I'll keep working that I've got a little sanding to do. They look like I've got them in the right position there. You can see I'm kind of anal about positioning the nostrils, but I've had so many off kilter that I just pay close attention to this now. I'll get some sanding done and come back. Now I'm going to use my embossing tool and just put a few wrinkles in the bill. A few coming out from the end of the nostrils here, or the enclosures. A few near the base of the bill here. And some coming out kind of radially up here. And I'm doing this quickly, but I'll take some time and go over these and make sure I don't have any sharp ridges. We want these to be soft. And I'm going to put a few coming from the nail back. And again, this will take some time to make sure they're deep enough that they can be seen through the paint, but we don't want trenches here with hard edges. Probably hard to see in the video. I think you can see some of those marks. Okay, and then we'll get the eyes put in place using my dividers, getting a distance from the tip of the bill there back to the front of the eye, and transferring that dimension to the wood on both sides. And then I'm going to be using 10 millimeter eyes. So I've got a circle template. Rough those in on both sides. And for those of you that have watched my other videos, I repeat some things like this process, but I pencil those in to get them positioned, but also to get a good visual from the front. And the way I've penciled those in, this one is lower than that one. That's not a good thing, so it's better to change it now, obviously, than after I get the eyes set and they look all cockeyed. So I'll work on that. Then we'll use, show you my mistakes too, because I make a ton of them, like everybody else. I'll get my gouge, and we'll get those opened up. I just go around the perimeter carefully with about a 1/4 inch gouge, and then pop that out. Same thing this side. Okay, I've got my 2-part epoxy sculpt, part A and B. That's what I use, epoxy sculpt for the eye set. I've got that mixed up so it's consistent in color. And now I'm going to use some water and an old brush and wet the eye socket in the surrounding area. And that'll help promote bonding of the epoxy sculpt, and then I'm just going to fill the cavity, get my eye, crowd the front, because that's where my dimension was with my calipers, and push this eye in place. This takes some effort to get it set in there deep enough. We don't want it to disappear from the front. I want it to be visible, but not bug-eyed. It's a technical term. Now I think I have that about the proper depth. I'm going to take a little additional material, press it in place around the eye. And I want to do something a little different on this bird. I want to show a little bit of eyelid underneath the eye. And that takes some work. But I need a little additional material down there, so I've put some down. We'll see if that's enough. Now I'm going to get water on my finger and begin to smooth this out into the surrounding wood. Because when we're done, you shouldn't have to do a lot of sanding, just a little bit to feather things into the surrounding area. And I'm covering up the eye right now, but we'll open that back up. I've got an old brush that's full of epoxy now, and it's just kind of a round point. And I'm going to use that to begin to open the epoxy sculpt back up away from the eye, and then use my finger to blend out. Pardon me if you hear some heavy breathing. It's this takes some effort to push this in place and move it around. It's pretty stiff. And I don't want to take that material out from under the eye yet. I'm just continuing with water to move material around here. I'm going to go shut off the heater. Now I'm going to begin to take some material out and move it away from the eye down here. But I want to leave a little material directly under the eye for that lid. So we're going to give this eye some expression, like it's a little bit sleepy, or she is. The other thing I've got is dental tools here. I was at my dentist one day, and the dental hygienist asked, she knew I carved, and she said, could I use dental tools that are at the end of life? They just throw them away. And so she gave me 2 or 3 of these, and they've just turned out to be a great tool for this type of work, to move things around. Okay, this is going to take some time, and I don't want to bore you with that, but I wanted to show you enough of the process here. I'm beginning to get kind of an eyelid form down here, and I'll continue to work that until I'm satisfied with the way it looks. And as this begins to cure, we can move things around a little bit more. Even after it's cured, I can do a little sculpting of the eye. All right, I'll do the other eye and then come back. As you can see, it gives her a little bit of an expression, a little sleepy-eyed look. Okay, I've got both of those installed. They look good. And I'll do some final shaping after that epoxy has cured. Okay, everybody, I think that's a good place to stop session 2. We've got the head pretty much completed. Now in session 3, next time, we'll work on shaping up the body. We'll probably get it rough shaped, then add some details. Until next time, Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to you. Have fun out there.